Greetings and good vibes. This is Erika with another Q and Q. And again, Q and Q means questions and queries. All right, we're going to jump right in. I've got a bunch of questions to get through, so let's just see what kind of fun I have in store for me today. What are the key skills needed for successful multicam live show directing? Wow, we're jumping right in on a difficult question. Directing experience, for one. I know that might sound silly, but if you haven't directed at all, there's no possible way you're going to be able to direct multiple people. And obviously, some of that directing, although I have a theater background and I switched into film and television, that experience really needs to be with a camera. If you've just done theater directing, yeah, I think you're still going to struggle to do anything with a lot of cameras, camera operators, people doing live edits. Like that whole thing is going to be way too much. So, experience in directing and at least experience filming with multiple cameras, even if you're not used to talking to a lot of different operators at the same time, as long as you have some understanding of what it looks like to see multiple cameras at once, you at least have a head start. So experience, patience. And I mean, patience is a huge, huge one. You do not want to get frustrated with your crew. You don't want to get frustrated with your operators. You don't want to get frustrated with any of the technical people, because if you do, their performance is going to suffer, and you are definitely going to put that onto the performers as well. So lots and lots and lots of patience. Communication, but more than communication is clear communication. You want to get across whatever your point is with the least amount of words and the least potential for confusion. So I'm going to just go with those three. I could probably go on for a while, but those three things are pretty major. Let's see what else we have in here. How do you ensure that the show's content is engaging and relevant for the audience? There's a school of thought which I frequently follow, which I wouldn't say is the best way of approaching it, is I don't necessarily always care what the audience thinks. I think if the people who are doing it are having fun and really enjoying what they're doing, most of the time the audience is going to like it. But I think you definitely need to take the audience's feelings into consideration. That feedback can come back through social media. That feedback can come back through, you can literally just ask people. If it's a live project and people are in the audience, you can chat with people, find out what they think of it. You can put out questionnaires or anything of that sort, asking people questions at the end of the show, or it could be something that you send to them to find out afterwards. But yeah, I would say in today's age, especially if it's an indie type thing, just asking wherever you're posting it, whether that's YouTube, TikTok, social media, asking people, and really, and even if you're not asking, just really listening to what the comments are. You can chase your audience, try to make content that fits what an audience wants, or you can just make what you love and hopefully know that the people that want to find you will find you. That's a little bit riskier, but certainly are people that do that sort of thing. What's your approach to managing live show rehearsals and run-throughs? In short, I want the rehearsals to be as close to what the show is actually going to be. I want the lighting to be right. I want the camera operators and the actual cameras in their exact positions. There's no point in doing a rehearsal if you just sort of set up your camera wherever and you just want to run through it. No, I want to see the cameras on the screen with all the different angles. I want to make sure everything looks right. I want to make sure the white balance is good. I want to make sure the camera operators are comfortable. I want to make sure the sound is ready to go. No point in doing a rehearsal if the sound person isn't there or they aren't ready, because you're gonna have to do everything again, because if the sound is bad, people will not watch it. So yeah, I want it to be as close. That's my approach. I want it to be as close to the real thing as possible for performers and technical people. How do you balance creative vision with practical constraints during a live show? That is something I deal with. I think is probably one of the things that I deal with the absolute most, especially working on indie stuff, is you never have the full budget you want. You never have all the people you want. You probably don't have the location you want. And so you're constantly having to adjust the amazing thing you would love to do with the reality of what's sitting right in front of you. And some people can get a little bogged down by the restraints and the limitations. Some people will make the most creative decisions they ever make in their life because their back is up against a wall and they have to figure out what's going to work best with what they have literally right there in front of them. So I like to see constraints as an opportunity to do something really, really fun. Occasionally, it's frustrating. You want to do, a car chase scene and you can't do it. You have to figure out another way around that. But if there's something that is absolutely integral to what you're doing, then you need to budget for that. If you need to do a car chase scene, what other parts of the budget can you maybe bring down a little bit or make adjustments to if that's the one thing that you're going to spend a lot of money on? Also, don't do that at the end of the shoot. Do not wait until the last day because it's totally going to fall apart. Make sure you do that early enough in the shoot where if something doesn't work, you have time to deal with it later. But yeah, to me, constraints means let's figure out something as creative as possible, as interesting as possible. Do something with the cameras, do something with the performers, do something with the location. Like find a way of doing something great, even if you can't necessarily do the thing that you had hoped to do from the beginning. What's your process for evaluating and improving the show after it airs? I wonder if that means the edit or if that means improve the show for the next episode. If it's for the edit, then working with the editor, working with the producers, if there's any kind of writers, just chatting about stuff going through, listening to the audience. I do a lot of comedy shows. If it's a comedy show, the audience doesn't laugh, you need to make an adjustment because something isn't working. Yeah, I think that's probably what it's asking about is the overall show. Does the tone work? Is there a logical through line? And I don't mean through line like is there a theme for the show, but I mean does one segment go nicely into the next segment? Are people rushed at some point? If you have a host or an MC, do they have enough time to move around? Is all the technical stuff working? Did you have 3 cameras that all had nearly the same angle and you realize you need to adjust the cameras afterwards? I don't know if I necessarily have a process, but you really need to go through a whole bunch of stuff. Often you have to watch, at least for me, I mean, I don't watch it a lot, but you might have to watch it 2 or 3 times, whatever your final product was, in case you've missed things the first time around. But after you've done this a while, you start noticing, you can notice the costumes and the lights and the cameras and some kind of technical video thing. You can catch all of those on 1 or 2 viewings, so you don't have to watch it a lot. But yeah, I don't think I have a process, but you can tell by the audience, you can tell by the vibe, you can tell a lot of times you can tell in the room when things are working and when things are not working. How do you ensure that all camera operators are aligned with your vision for the show? Oh, that's an interesting one. Sometimes, not always, sometimes the camera operators have no idea what's going on. They don't know what your vision is and they're just there doing a job. If they're just there doing a job, you need to make sure they're comfortable. They have at least a fair idea of what they're doing. If you've got one person who's doing nothing but close-ups, make sure they know that. Make sure they've got a good camera, some kind of good follow focus where they can adjust things that are going on. Make sure they know what's going on. I don't necessarily think they need to know what your vision is for the show, especially if there's someone who was hired last minute, someone who's filling in. They might not know anything about what your vision for the show is, but definitely make sure they have some idea of what's going on, what they're filming, what they're supposed to be following. If you've got a show where you're doing a lot of slam focuses, where you're moving focus in and out, make sure that they know that and definitely make sure they do that in the practice so they can get used to doing it. So yeah, make sure give them as much information as you can. That will be helpful. If you've got 10 minutes to talk to them before the show, do not spend 9.5 of those minutes talking about what you've done for the last 3 years. And we wanted to build this show because, well, none of that matters. If you've only got 10 minutes, make sure that they know in those 10 minutes the general style of what they're doing, make sure they know what to film, make sure they have a little bit of a rehearsal, make sure they can talk to the other camera operator so that they at least have some idea of what they're doing for the show. I don't think they necessarily need to actually know what your vision is, like big picture. How do you handle live interruptions during the show? That would depend on what the interruption is. if the interruption is, the fire alarm's going off, you're gonna have to pause because one, it's a safety thing. If everybody has to evacuate the building, then you have to evacuate the building. If immediately you find out it's not a real drill, something accidental happened, you may still need to pause if the sirens are going off because you can't hear what's going on. So it depends on what the interruption is. If it's something that literally impedes the performers, the technical people, or the audience from either doing their roles or watching the show, you're gonna have to pause or stop or make some kind of an adjustment. If it's a person who's heckling, if you've got any kind of security and you want them removed, just make sure that they're removed. If it's someone who's being slightly annoying, if you've got a really good host or MC and you think they can chat the person out of being annoying from the audience, do that. If the interruption is, a light on stage burned out, which happened to me in a show I was in, I don't know, maybe 6, 8 months ago, one of the lights on stage burned out. It if you were staring at it, you would have noticed it. If you weren't staring at it, you wouldn't have noticed it. So when someone brought it to my attention, I looked at the monitor, I looked at all the different cameras, saw what it looked like, and I said, we're just going to leave it. So you're not going to notice it in the edit. It's so subtle. I mean, the light had a purpose, like there was a reason it was there, but it wasn't important enough to stop the show, have somebody go out, either change the bulb, move any of the light instruments around. None of that was important. So yeah, it's really a big question as to how much it's going to impede the show itself.